this sprint, we'll be working on some two-digit multiplication in our head. These will be pretty simple. Most of them are just a two-digit number times a one-digit number. There will be a few problems where you'll have to multiply a two-digit number times a two-digit number, but then one of them is a multiple of 10. So those are not that difficult either. For these problems, you need to really make sure you know your one-digit multiplication. Those are your multiplication facts. If you're not super quick at those yet, make sure you continue to work on the multiplication facts sprint to increase your speed there. When you are multiplying larger numbers, you really only need two skills. You need to know your one-digit multiplication, and you need to understand place value. So let's look at our first example. We will do 42 times 6. So you want to kind of think about how to do this in your head. For these problems, I'm going to use these base 10 blocks to kind of illustrate our numbers. So right here I have the number 42 because I have 10, 20, 30, 40, and 2. So in this problem I'm taking this number 42 and I'm multiplying it by 6. So you can imagine, taking this group of 42 and making 5 more of them. So you have 6 of them, and that would be 42 times 6. Now that's probably not the easiest way to think about this. So what we're going to do is break this into two pieces. We're going to think about the 40 piece and the 2 piece separately. So we'll take the 40 piece and we'll multiply that by 6, and we'll take the 2 piece and we'll multiply that by 6. So what we end up having is the 40 times 6 and the 2 times 6. 2 times 6, 12. And then 40 times 6, and this is kind of, you worked on this skill already, where you can do the 6 times the 4 is 24, and then add your 0, and you get 240. So now, you just add those together, because you can imagine you have 6 groups of these, 6 groups of these, and then you add them all together, you get your answer. So you take 240 plus 12, which should give you 252. Hopefully you can add this in your head, the 40 and the 12, to get 52. So the answer is 252. Now what you're really doing here is you're using the distributive property. And I'm just going to show this to you. The distributive property. So what that says is that 42 times 6 is the same thing as 40 plus 2 times 6, which is the same thing as the 40 times the 6 plus the 2 times the 6, which is what we have down here. So this is the same thing as the 40 times the 6 plus the 2 times the 6. And that's the two pieces like this. So you could, thinking of 42 times 6, 6 groups of 42, that's the same thing as 6 groups of 40 plus 6 groups of 2. And that's the distributive property. Sometimes you'll see it like this. So like 6 times 40 plus 2, we distribute the 6 like that, and we say 6 times 40 plus 6 times 2. So what you're doing in these mental math problems is you're just using the distributive property to, in your head, to solve these problems. Let's do another example. Okay, let's try 63 times 5. So we're thinking about this in our head. So you could, in your head, kind of imagine these, if it helps. We have the 60, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and the 3. You're going to multiply this group by 5 and this group by 5. So in your head, you're thinking, oh, I want to take 60 times 5, and I want to take 3 times 5. That'll give you 15, and this will give you 300. 6 times 5 is 30, plus my 0 is 300. So I add them together, and I get 315. So just to review in your head, you see this problem on the sprint, 63 times 5. You think 60 times 5 is 300, 3 times 5 is 15, 300 plus 15 is 315. And what you're really just doing here is using that distributive property like I illustrated, and you're thinking about the place value. You're thinking about the 6 as the 60 and the 3 as just 3 ones. So we'll do one more problem. I'll show an example of a 2-digit times a 2-digit that you might see. Something like this you might see on the sprint. 51 times 70. So now here, what you want to do here is break up that 70. Because if you can do this, all you need to do to multiply that by 10 is to add a 0. So let's do that. So now this is really just what I've been showing. It's just the 51 times the 7. So 50 times 7 is going to be 350. 50 times 7. 7 times 5 is 35 plus the 0, 350. And then the 1 times the 7 would be 7. So that's going to give you 357. Now all you got to do is multiply that by 10, and that means you're adding a 0. So your answer is 3,570 for that one. So it's pretty much like the earlier problems, except you're going to have to multiply by 10 at the end and adding that 0 in. So I think that covers all the types of problems you'll see. Good luck on the sprint.